how can we continue to fight COVID-19 and prepare ourselves for the next pandemic? Particularly with a large number of countries still lacking access to vaccines and medical facilities, as well as trained professionals, much needs to be done to make the recovery equitable. That's why health ministers, international organizations and vaccine companies are going to gather to discuss at a global summit that begins on Tuesday here in Seoul, South Korea, to discuss such issues. Organized by South Korea and the World Health Organization, global health leaders are going to discuss the future of vaccines and biohealth, as well as share the latest trends in vaccines and biotechnology in support of the recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. And well, to highlight this very important mission, we turn to SHIN Eunkyung, Director of Global Vaccine Partnership Team at Korea's Ministry of Health and Welfare. Warm welcome to you, Director Shin. Thank you for joining us. And joining us virtually is Dr. Hani. She is the Executive Director of Right Foundation. It's wonderful to see you. Thank you for joining us. And lovely to have you on. And to begin with you, Director Shin. Now, first of all, we want to hear about this global summit that you're arranging. And first, what makes it important and what will be the core agendas here?
Thank you. It is no surprise to us now how deeply the world is interconnected from our experience with the COVID-19 pandemic. So we have seen how in this interlinked world, the individual success of one country or one region in terms of disease prevention is not enough to stop the spread of the virus. So the key is how fast we can develop and deploy pandemic response tools like vaccine, therapeutics, and diagnostics. This is dependent on innovative technologies in medical science and the speed of development. Generally, it takes 5 to 10 years to develop a vaccine. But for COVID-19, it only takes 11.3 months to develop one using novel technology like mRNA. So it is important that we have capable vaccine manufacturing sites across the world that engage in scale production of vaccine. The pandemic has taught us that it is equally important that all nations have even access to those prevention tools without delaying. To this end, we are closely cooperating with WHO and co-hosting the WorldBio Summit to go over the lessons learned from the COVID-19 and seek collaboration to better prepare for the next pandemic using innovative technologies with actors in the field of vaccine and biohealth. Since relevant actors in the field of health came a long way together at the summit, we are going to announce the joint declaration containing tangible commitment and responding to the next pandemic. We are putting in our best efforts so this event can be a stepping stone for Korea to become the leading nation in vaccine and biologics industry. That's what I expect for the event.
I see. So that's kind of two big things there that we're looking at, a joint declaration and also Korea becoming the vaccine hub of the world. And you're right, we saw over the course of the pandemic, some individual countries really tackling the virus well, some not as much, but countries appear to have been going it alone for quite a while. And there was a lot of calls for global cooperation. And certainly your minister as well, Cho, he said that low and middle income countries, they've been lacking access to vaccines and the necessary facilities, and he's really urged the need in order to clear these barriers. And in terms of doing that, what kind of global partnerships or cooperations do you think are needed in order to make vaccines more accessible and really help all countries tackle this disease?
Yes, during the pandemic, the international community has channeled its strengths in response to COVID-19 through solidarity and cooperation that went beyond borders. Scientists shared the newly discovered pathogen's genomic sequence as soon as possible COVID-19 outbreak started. Centered on the access to COVID-19 tools, Act A, led by WHO, the fund was quickly raised to develop COVID-19 vaccine, and cooperation between vaccine developers and manufacturers was facilitated to expand the global supply of pandemic response tools like vaccine. COVAX facility then tried to distribute this vaccine and therapeutics evenly to the region and those in need. World Bank, Asian Development Bank, and African Development Bank, and other international financial institutions also finance emergency funds required to carry out COVID-19 prevention measures. These efforts led to the successful creation of financial intermediary fund, which from a mid to long-term perspective can promote investment in pandemic prevention, response, and preparedness. So pandemic response tools refers to the vaccine therapeutics and diagnostics. What came into the limelight during the pandemic is how access these tools varies greatly among the country. So during the pandemic, countries shared their vaccines and disease prevention items, so helping each others is one of the reasons we need international cooperation, but it was not that enough. To address this issue, WHO has an audacious plan to create mRNA technology transfer hub and a global training hub for the biomanufacturing. To empower the vaccine manufacturing capacity in low and middle-income countries, it has formed the South African Consortium as a hub for the mRNA tech transfer hub. And where a total of 15 LMICs from 6 Africa, 5 from Asia, 2 from Latin America, 2 from Europe have been chosen as a spook nations. So naturally, to receive this type of technology transfer, the respondent nations must have a properly trained workforce to make use of the technology. For this reason, WHO has nominated Korea as the first global training hub for biomanufacturing this February. You can say that Korea basically became a training academy for the bio workforce from all over the world. For this initiative against the future pandemic from WHO, International Development Bank, and government to successfully establish it, there needs to be a consensus that no one is safe until everyone is. To this end, international cooperation is the key for it.
Right, really making sure that all countries have the right resources, supplies, and not to mention the logistics, transportation, and the personnel that you talked about. So very important things that we're dealing with here. And well, there's also innovation as well, which you also mentioned. But turning to you, Dr. Kim, now your company, you've been supporting over 40 projects, I believe, to really leverage Korean life science partners' strengths towards global health equity. Now, can you describe a few examples of what kind of projects you've been working on and how you've really been contributing to, well, making global health that much more equitable?
So we've been funding, as you've correctly mentioned, over 40 projects in the last 4 years. And just to give you 2 examples to illustrate how we hope that these will contribute in some small ways to reducing the gross health inequities that we've observed that Director Shin has alluded to. So first, one of our projects is supporting developing a next generation diagnostic kit to detect a health condition called G6PD deficiency. So G6PD, glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase, this is an enzyme that's very important for maintaining healthy red blood cells, and we all have this. Now, you may think that, well, how does that relate to global health anything? As it turns out that for vast majority of malaria-infected individuals, they have this medical condition where they lack this enzyme. And what that means is their red blood cells are fragile. And when they receive a highly effective malaria treatment called primaquine, they can have deadly side effects. So in order for them to be receiving this very effective malaria drug, we need to identify who actually has and doesn't have this important medical condition. And as you can imagine, there's not a lot of commercial incentives into this area of innovation because the affected population tends to be among the poorest in the world. So we are supporting SD Biosensor in collaboration with a US-based nonprofit organization called PATH to develop a highly sensitive and low-cost diagnostic tests to detect this particular medical condition. And the potential impact that this may have is if the malaria control community can quickly identify who has this condition, therefore is likely to develop this side effect when we give them this malaria drug, that's extremely important towards our malaria eradication goals. So that's one example for diagnostic kit. If we turn to the vaccine side of things, let's take typhoid as an example. Typhoid still kills roughly, I have my notes here, the number of people that are about 4 times as many people that have died due to COVID in Korea since COVID started. So annually, that's how many people die of this disease called typhoid, especially in low resource settings. But again, there's not a lot of commercial incentives to innovate. So we do have a vaccine, a very old vaccine to prevent typhoid, but it needs to be updated using the latest technologies, like most other things that the wealthy nations have benefited from. So we are currently supporting the next generation typhoid vaccine so that it could truly improve the outcome of the typhoid disease that mostly affects the populations in low and middle income countries. So those are two of examples that we are currently supporting.
Right, we really can't forget the intense efforts that are needed to address all sorts of conditions and illnesses other than the COVID-19 pandemic, although of course the pandemic has brought to light developments that are needed in biohealth, certainly. And how have you been working with the industry here in Korea in order to address global health R&D needs over the years? Because of course, research and development really is the backbone of innovation.
Yes, very much so. So unlike research and development to just develop something that has a lot of commercial incentives, when we say global health R&D, there's a couple of important aspects that must be considered that we at the Right Foundation tries to actively communicate with our potential partners and grantees so that they can be engaged in this space more effectively with an impact. And we try to do this in a number of ways. First, we try to create opportunities for partnerships. I think both you and Director SHIN mentioned the critical importance of partnerships and cooperation. R&D is not an exception. So we try to create opportunities where we bring in experts within Korea that are very strong in particular aspects of developing vaccines, drugs, or diagnostics, but nobody's good at every aspect. So I think the key to collaboration is to bring in complementary expertise and to identify who holds them. So we at the Right Foundation are actively examining, on the lookout to identify those experts who hold complementary skills to Korean partners. We create opportunities for them to gather together to talk about their projects, their interests. And thirdly, we also bring in the international actors into the mix so that we could consider right from the start what it takes to develop something, whether it's a vaccine or therapeutics, in order for that to be ultimately useful for and in low and middle income countries. And here I would like to emphasize it's not enough to just try to develop something for the people in LMICs. I was so delighted to hear the word solidarity from Director SHIN. It is really anchored in the spirit of solidarity, meaning we have to work together with the partners in low and middle income countries so that we can think together about what does it really take for us together to design and develop a vaccine or diagnostic kit so that it's useful not just to the highest income countries, but truly globally. So we try to create opportunities for partners from not just high income countries, but low and middle income countries to pull this knowledge and skills together. And secondly, we try to also actively raise awareness around what it takes to design and develop critical health technologies with that ultimate impact in low and middle income countries.
Certainly, solidarity is very much needed, and all these efforts in different parts of the world, different sectors, government, private businesses, and businesses like yourself bringing these efforts together, that is very much needed to move forward in terms of addressing this pandemic. And well, my last question to you, Director Shin, how will South Korea work with the World Health Organization in order to really address future pandemics in the future?
Korea has willingness and capability to contribute in the area of fostering vaccine and biologics manufacturing workforce as the first global training hub for biomanufacturing. Since last June, Korean government and the WHO, partnering with International Vaccine Institute and Yonsei University, we brought a total of 170 trainees from low and middle income countries to take training programs on broad vaccinology and biosafety, as well as hands-on training. At the moment, 27 trainees from the Asian Pacific region taking their 8 weeks hands-on training at the Yonsei University K-9 Center. To the end of this month, another 200 trainees is planning to come to Korea to take vaccinology and biosafety courses. So in the long run, Korea's effort to foster biomanufacturing workforce across the globe will be a solid asset to ensure equal access to pandemic response tools like vaccine for every nation by equipping their own capability to produce them, the pandemic response tools. That's our dream and our goal. Thank you.
Right, well, we look forward to these developments coming from your summit beginning next week. So thank you very much to our two wonderful panelists today. That was SHIN Eunkyung, Director of Global Vaccine Partnership Team at Korea's Ministry of Health and Welfare, and Hani, Doctor and Executive Director of Right Foundation. Again, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Also, a big thank you to our global viewers. Global Insight will be back after the weekend on Monday. Have a wonderful weekend wherever you are. Goodbye.